Hello and welcome to the Daily Telegraph NRL Podcast. I'm Brent Read. I'm joined on this bright and breezy Monday morning by Fatima, Kdouh, Tyson Jackson. Let's talk about the completion of round one.
Yes, the rest.
What caught your eye, Fatima? What have you got for us?
As a Raiders fan, Sticky and his gritty charges caught my eye. A lot of people weren't expecting a lot from Canberra this year. Talk that they're going to finish bottom four, questions over their roster, over their spine, but their forward pack absolutely stood up and dominated on the weekend. And if they can produce that sort of effort, I reckon they might surprise some people.
Yeah, they had a few out too. No Horsburgh.
No Horsburgh.
There were a couple more off the top of my head, can't think of. Oh, no, Sebastian Chris.
Yep.
I was on the sideline for that game.
Yep.
And before the game, it just had a sense like there was going to be an upset.
Yeah.
What about you, Tyson? What did you think out of round one?
Yeah, just like Fatima, I think the Raiders were great. Probably my highlight of round one, Jamal Fogarty, I think is going to be a top half this year. I think he showed that. I wanted to touch on the Sharks-Warriors game. I think what I took out of that was everyone's like, oh, what, the Warriors are losing round one. You know, they've been hyped up as this team that's going to be a big threat this year. But I'm not worried about the Warriors after that game. I think it was a tough game and it could have gone either way. I think they just needed to tweak a couple of things, but I think there's no worries about the Warriors yet.
Did you think... Well, that game they're up 12-0, 10-0 from memory, 10-0, 10-0 I think it was. It's the sort of game where I would have expected Shaun Johnson to take control. And some of his decisions I didn't think were great, particularly in the second half of that footy game. And obviously Shaun came back this year. He's at an age where sometimes you can just fall off a cliff. Do you any concerns on that front?
Not yet. I think potentially we could get to that stage, but at the moment, Shaun didn't play a lot of trial games. He's older now. Body they're probably trying to preserve a little bit. I think we need to give him a couple of rounds, see how we pan out after that. That Warriors team on paper has the potential to do massive things this year. We just got to wait and see what happens. But yeah, from that standpoint, it's round one, so we've got to take everything with a grain of salt.
I think for some teams in round one, it's too early to say, oh, there's going to be issues or the rest of it. You know, we saw Penrith not even manage to get a point on the board, but they were slow starters last year and they won the premiership. But for other teams, I think round one did give us a bit of an insight into the kind of season that they're going to have. The Bulldogs, which people sort of expected anyway, but there's clearly still a lot of work for Cameron Ciraldo to do. He probably hasn't got the makeup of his team completely right yet. He does have a bunch of utilities, which means he can make changes if he wants to. And the Titans were the other one. I honestly, I looked at the Titans with Des coming in, the roster that they have, I expected them to be the sort of biggest improvers, but the credit to Shane Flanagan and the Dragons, they just were dominant that entire match, and the Titans really were disappointing considering there was a bit of hype around them going into this season.
Let's start with the Doggies, right? Because for me, the issue with the Doggies, I think we all saw it before the season started.
Yeah.
Their halves were a problem.
Yeah.
They've got no middle forwards, right?
Yeah, which I think is a bigger problem.
That's how it played out.
Yeah.
I mean, their middle, they got smashed up in the middle of the field.
Yeah.
And Drew Hutchison and Matty Burton were basically, I thought they were relatively anonymous.
Yep.
So the issues they had, I think were issues that we all saw coming. And look, I think Cameron Ciraldo saw them coming. I think Cam's spent the off-season trying to sign and find middle forwards. And he ended up with Zane Tedavano and Daniel Saluka Fafita, who with due respect of them, are basically journeymen.
Yeah.
So,
and Saluka Fafita's out with the ACL injury and so won't even play until May.
So you know the Dogs pretty well, Tyson. You were hanging out there for a while. I mean, there were issues I think we all saw coming, but the way it panned out was pretty... it was just on show for everyone, basically.
Yeah, well, I think what I took out of that game, the Bulldogs obviously out wide, they've got weapon after weapon. Even I wrote a story last week on Bronson Xerri in reserve grade who played quite well in reserve grade. But my big thing, obviously you need your front rowers to go forward. I think their biggest issue is in jersey number 13. They chose to start with Jamin Salmon. He ended up finding his way out onto an edge by the end of the game. I liked Kurt Mann at lock, even though he's not the biggest body, but you just see their attack kind of, they scored points when he was there. But yeah, you're putting Jamin Salmon or even Kurt Mann in the lock position, and you're taking size away from an already small forward pack. You got someone like Josh Curran sitting on the bench, and I just think if we can put Curran in that starting 13 jersey. It won't fix the problems, but it will add a bit more size, and that's where they struggled, especially at the beginning of the game. So yeah, especially with Junior Paulo coming off the bench.
Well, that was always going to be a big test for them because the Eels have a big pack, right? Especially their two starting props. I don't know whether it's just because of what Ciro has available to him. I spoke to some players last week who said, we know we're not the biggest pack, but we're going to be mobile, and the plan is to move sides around. But it just didn't happen, even with a big pack like the Eels, they sort of struggled to do that. So size is going to be a problem. Maybe Josh Curran, solves that problem. Again, I think Salmons is in the 13 jumper for similar reasons to why Blake Taaffe is in the number 1 jumper, that they both can sort of create and, they're playmakers before their 13s and number 1s. So maybe that's the thinking there by Ciro, just to give their attack any sort of edge. But yeah, you're right, their pack is smaller than a lot of other clubs, and it is going to hurt them.
I mean, it has a trickle effect, right? Because come Monday morning, we're all talking about who should be the halfback, who should be the fullback. Should he move Steve Crichton to fullback?
Should he? What are our thoughts on that? Should Steve Crichton
that was
be
the
a
original
fullback?
reason he was bought, to play fullback. But then they went and bought Blake Taaffe, and they bought Connor Tracy, and they bought all these options at fullback. And it's almost like...
But none of
they're
those,
trying to fit
any
them
of
all in
those
the team,
options
right?
still better than Crichton playing at fullback?
Well, Crichton's a bit of a... I would say Steve's a bit of a... He's not a proven commodity. I know he's played a bit of
He's
fullback.
not.
He's not a proven commodity.
So
and he's arguably... Well, he's an elite centre, right?
He is
one
an
of the
elite
best
centre,
centres
and he's a
top,
good
so.
defensive centre. I did talk to someone who seemed to suggest that they thought he didn't have the body type for fullback.
What does
that mean? Exactly.
What does that mean?
So
maybe Mitchell plays fullback.
Exactly.
He's as big as a front rower.
But the idea is that maybe he's a bit too big, might not be able to get through the kind of work rate that needs to be done at fullback. But regardless of whether he, if he stays at centre, he needs to do more work at centre. Like, he barely touched the ball on the weekend, and I know a lot of that has to do with there's a responsibility of the edges to get him early ball and the rest of it. But also, if you're the captain, you're the highest paid player in that team. Maybe at this point, is anyone earning more money than him?
Kickout's on good cash.
Kickout, but
Burton's on decent money.
Yeah.
There's a few highly paid players there.
Yeah, there are a few highly paid players, but go after the ball.
Yeah, I think the issue, Tyson, they would have spent this their pre-season games. I don't think Steve played any of the trials at fullback from memory.
No, he played the last one. He played 30 minutes
at centre. Centre.
So they've played the pre-season with Blake Taaffe at fullback, right? And they've got that kind of Tracy option in their back pocket. Do you throw that all out the window after one game and stick Steve back there and say, we're drawing it all up again, starting again? Because that's what it almost would feel. I don't know. Is it?
Well, I think someone who watched them train a bit during pre-season, they trained really hard, and things do look good. I would say if they, let's say it's only round 2 coming up now, if they chuck everything out the window to put Steve Crichton at fullback and it doesn't work, where do they go from there? You're going to move your captain, one of your highest paid players, to fullback, back to centre, then we'll bring Connor Tracy in, then Blake Taaffe gets lost in the mix. I just think they've kind of got, it's got to be a bit patient. Like, if they've chosen to go with Taaffe, give Taaffe the time, but find a way to make it work. Penrith found a way to make it work with Stephen Crichton playing centre, and he was deadly. He won in the 3 grand finals they won. Stephen Crichton had a hand in winning all 3 of those, a big hand. People want to talk about Nathan Cleary. If Stephen Crichton wasn't there, maybe apart from the Parramatta one, they don't win the other 2. I think they have to stick with it now, because just in case it doesn't work, if for some reason it doesn't work out, they're in a worse position then than they are right now.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The other issue is Matt Burton, right? Because, again, his position got discussed all pre-season. Is he a 6? Is he a centre? And, I was on the way in listening on the radio, and they were talking about moving Matt Burton to the centre again, because he's a better centre than 5'8".
Is he, though? I mean, he was a good centre playing at Penrith, but that's because he was, in a system where he could go from being a playmaker to centre and look really good playing at centre. Not to say that he couldn't do it. I'm not saying that he can do it, and he showed at Penrith that he can do it, but at Penrith he also had high calibre players around him all over the park, which made his transition into centre look easy. So look, it's I was out there a couple of weeks ago, and they were still. This was before round one, still going through combinations, and they did run a combination where they had Taff and Drew Hutchison in the halves, and Matt Burton playing out at centre. But at that point, Kdouh wasn't training yet because I think he had that. Was it the quad he sort of carried? Yeah. So they have tried a number of different combinations, but I think the one that's probably had the most reps is Crichton at centre. So Tyson does make a good point. Is it too early to sort of reshuffle absolutely everything?
I want to pose this question as well, but if let's
pose the questions, mate.
All right.
What do you got?
So I don't want to take your job. But if we move Burton to centre, we just spoke about him. I'm a massive Drew Hutchison fan. But like we said, didn't really get to do much on the weekend. So we move a dominant half to the centres. Then we bring Sexton in, who got outplayed for his spot already.
Or you play Taff at 6.
Yeah, or you play Taff at 6, who hasn't played in the halves for a fair amount of time either. It's like, are the Bulldogs going to be a better team with Matt Burton in the centres? I don't think so. I think the more Matt Burton touches the ball, the better. It's just about him being in that half position and getting to touch the ball. We all know what he can do.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about one of the better performers in round one.
Yeah.
Actually, we'll talk about the Dragons, because a lot of hype around that. Well, a lot of talk around the Dragons in the pre-season.
It was the opposite of hype in the pre-season.
But obviously Shane Flanagan coming in.
Yeah.
And I think there was, amongst Dragons fans, who were, I wouldn't say they were overly hopeful. I think they
apprehensive.
were optimistic.
Oh, were they?
Guardedly optimistic.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what, it went better than I think anyone could have hoped. I mean, the Titans were abysmal.
Yeah, they
absolutely abysmal. But the Dragons were outstanding.
I've been saying all along that yes, people were tearing apart their roster. The fact that Shane Flanagan hadn't been able to land any sort of big signings. Yes, he made a couple of signings, but not sort of the marquee that he wanted, that he said he wanted, right? He said he's going to rebuild that roster. But I've always felt that the biggest ace they've had up in their sleeve was Shane Flanagan. And you can tell in their performances in the trials and then again in round one that, this is a team coached by a guy who likes to play gritty football, who it's all about attitude, it's all about effort, and the way he's just managed to get the best out of guys like Sully, Jaden Sewer, just all of a sudden he's getting the most out of his players. I mean, credit to Zac Lomax. There was talk going into that game that he's not happy there, that he wants out, but he put his hand up and he played a pretty good game out at wing. I don't know how the rest of that plays out, Reedy, whether he is there by the end of the year, but whatever he's doing in terms of coaching and getting the best out of his players, it's working, and that's going to be their best asset this year, I think.
It's funny because obviously last year was a lot of talk about Benny Hunt going to the Titans.
Yeah.
Ben Hunt's probably doing cartwheels now that he stayed, but Zac Lomax, you raised Zac Lomax. All the talk last week, he's unhappy playing on the wing. He was outstanding, and Zac's been a guy who I reckon over time. One of the criticisms of him is that occasionally he can drop his head and get the pips about when things aren't going his way. Well, things weren't going his way last week, and there's a lot of, as I said, he's not happy playing on the wing, but he was outstanding for them.
But see, the thing is, when you're winning, you're happy, right? So do you want to be a centre in a losing team, or do you want to be a winger making 200 plus metres a week?
And they're a winning team, though.
Are they? Well, they were last year.
Yeah.
Well, they might be, but you know what I mean? Like, do you want to be a winger making 200 metres a week in a winning team, or a centre in a team that's struggling?
Yeah.
So I think for someone like Zac Lomax, if they're winning, he's not going to kick too many stones about him being out on the wing, especially when people are talking about him being an Origin winger potentially and the rest of it. And the other one was Sloan. How good was it to see him, score a hat-trick?
Well, he's been Flano's pet project in the pre-season, Tyrell Sloan. So, what were your impressions?
I think in the pre-season, a lot of people were still, even after the 2 pre-season games, is Sloan our fullback? We should put Lomax there, things like that. I'm actually eating my words currently. I tipped the Dragons to get the wooden spoon, but I made those tips prior to the preseason, and as watching them do the preseason,
it's in the paper, man.
Yeah, it is in the paper. Yes.
It's in black and white. It's on the record.
I've had a lot of friends. I've had a lot of friends message me and say, "You don't know what you're talking about. Who gave you the expert title?" But I think the Dragons are a team, and I saw this in the preseason. They're gonna try bully teams. They're gonna try get it over teams, and that's that's Shane Flanagan to a T. That's what he does, and that's what made the Sharks so successful when he was there. So yeah, I think if the Dragons can shut out teams early, like they did to the Tigers in the last preseason game, and like they did to the Titans on the weekend, man, you don't want to face that side.
Well, they've got a great draw. They've got the Dolphins this week, and the Dolphins were abysmal.
Yeah, what's doing there?
Absolutely abysmal.
What's
on Sunday,
going on?
They were terrible.
Yeah.
Against the Cowboys. Cowboys were really good, really good. The Cowboys, and I think that's the Cowboys side we saw 2 years ago.
Yeah.
They were disappointing last year. They got so much attacking the Cowboys. A great edge back rowers with Lukey and Nanai. Tommy Dearden, I think, is a fantastic player.
Yeah.
Scotty Drinkwater. They got a bit of luck. Penalty try went their way. Wouldn't have mattered in the end.
Wouldn't have mattered.
It was a dodgy, terrible call.
Yeah, it won't matter for Casey Badger.
They look really good, the Cowboys.
Yeah, no, I agree. I jumped on the Cowboys bandwagon a couple of years ago when they were doing well. I'm a massive Todd Payton fan, so yeah, I think their team has a great balance. There's not too much of one thing and not the rest. I like the halves pairing, Chad Townsend. I think he still has a bit of footy left to play, partnering with Dearden, and then like you said, that their strike on their edges is ridiculous from their second row all the way to their wings.
What did you make of the penalty try? Thoughts? Clanger?
A bit of a clanger. Yeah. Penalty try. It's, there was, I don't know, I know people sort of slow these things down to frame by frame and the rest of it, but there's definitely a point there where the ball kind of jinks a little bit, and it looks like it's gone past the players, and I don't know. Social media was blowing up. They love a referee clanger, but what do you guys reckon in the?
Oh, I thought it was a shocker.
Yeah.
Shocker. And obviously, I think Casey Badger made the call right. So the question then becomes: does Casey spend a week in Reggie's? I don't know. I wouldn't go that far. I think she's probably got some credit in the bank, but it was a bad decision.
Yeah. It's a hard job being a referee. So I tend to just like to not say too much on that, but you guys covered it pretty much. It's it's pretty nail on the head. It was a big error. So.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, like you said, it didn't affect the results. So we won't kind of, other than that initial outrage, it's not going to be something that we're going to be talking about all week. But still, it's sort of hard to see how Badger came to that to that decision.
Just quickly, Panthers Melbourne, which I thought was a great game on Friday night. Loved watching that game. Yeah, on the lounge with a beer.
Is that because the Storm are your second favourite team?
Yeah. No, I thought the Storm played really well.
Wait, aren't they supposed to be after Fiji? Aren't they supposed to be your favourite team?
But you know what? They played tough. Right? Without Nelson, without Cam Munster.
Yeah.
That was a great win. But Penrith, every year they lose some players, like Steve Crichton this off-season. We go, well, they're going to...
And Spencer Leniu.
And Spencer Leniu, they're going to fall back to the pack a bit. What do you take out of Friday night? Have they fallen back to the pack? Have people caught up? They lost round one last year.
Yeah, they lost round one. I think they lost 2 of their first 3 last year, plus the World Club Challenge. So maybe there's a bit of a hangover from that went into that season. Maybe it's the same this year. For them as well, they've had pretty shortened pre-seasons in the last couple of years. So I wonder how much of that sort of does affect you, especially with the more players you lose. You need to build combinations, but I don't know. They've managed to overcome losing players since they started making grand finals 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know. I think it's very early. It's very early to write Penrith off, or even to suggest that they've come to the pack. If anything, it's up to everybody else to prove that they've closed the gap between them and Penrith. Cleary was a bit.
I was going to say there's still got a bloke named Nathan Cleary.
Yeah, and look, he
whatever they got him, it won't matter who they lose. I think.
Yeah, I know he sort of was a bit clunky in the World Club Challenge, and maybe a bit again against the Storm, but. Come on, you can't. They're such a hard team to write off. I think the loss of Stephen Crichton, though, like Api Coruscant, they managed to overcome Api Coruscant, but I think you can't underestimate the loss of Crichton. I think he's going to be a massive loss for them this year.
I would say Taylor May was outstanding.
Yes.
Can you write him off, please? Can someone write him off?
See,
Can you put a line through it? Give us something.
I bit my tongue there because every year, like you said, that they've kind of started last year very similar, losing the World Cup.
I wrote them off last year.
And as soon as one of us say, now's the time, they go, they like to stick it to us, I think, more than any other team. So I will not be saying anything about Penrith. I think they looked a bit different, but ask me in round 12, and I bet you they'll probably be a couple of points out of the rest.
Now let's touch on our great mate Buzz Rothfield, the legendary Phil Buzz Rothfield.
Wasn't this a team
In
effort?
his column today, I just helped him do some figures. He's done his column is projections on what each team is worth. So this is an actual salary cap, what these guys are paid.
Yeah,
this is projections about what we think they're worth. And basically what it showed was that the Roosters squad is worth as much as $2 million more than the Tigers. I think the Tigers were the bottom, they were 17th, weren't they, in valuations?
Yeah, 10.245.
For me, what it shows is that the Roosters, what we've always known, right? The Roosters use the cap or use value players, sign players at a better rate than players who potentially go.
What they're worth on the market. Yeah.
What were your impressions of this? I mean, it's not. I think it's what a lot of us like. What are the top couple of teams again? Fatima, remind me.
So you've got the Roosters, Penrith, Rabbitohs, and then we've got Warriors, Knights. Sort of interesting to see sort of the Knights ahead of a team like the Broncos and the Storm, who have like a really rich spine, especially at the Storm.
Yeah.
But I mean, we see sort of what the Roosters do in what Penrith does. That success has helped them. I think a couple of years ago, Cleary said, he's willing to take a little bit less to make sure that can keep other players. They haven't really been overly successful in keeping some of their bigger stars, but it does help. Dylan Edwards was probably a similar situation in his contract negotiations. He probably could have got $1 million in the market, but it took a little bit less to stay at Penrith. And I think what Robbo's been really good at doing in the last, actually since his time at the Roosters is, that money ball approach where you find those guys that are undervalued, that you might be paying them 200, 300, 400, but they're producing at 600, 700. And I think that they're not they're gems almost. They're like the diamonds in the rough. They're a bit hard to find, but Robbo's been really good at finding those guys to plug in around the Tedescos, the Kearys, the Manus. So it doesn't surprise me that they're the rich. We call them the richest squad, the most expensive,
most valuable squad.
Yeah, the salary sombrero, which is what people would call it. But it's not by accident. It's not by accident that clubs like Penrith and clubs like Roosters do have the most valuable rosters.
Well, players want to go there, right? And there was like the old Storm way. Players want to go there because you go there and you become a better player. So they go there for less money. Whilst players aren't going to go to the Tigers at the moment for less money.
They're not going to go to
Canterbury for less money.
Yeah.
Because those clubs aren't winning. If you go to the Roosters, you go to Penrith, you go to Melbourne, you go to South, you're a chance of winning a comp.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say especially with the Roosters, they're a team that takes care of their players and not just current players, but when you do move on, you look at the guys they still have around the club, Boyd Cordner, Jake Friend, Mitch Orbison, those guys, when they sign with the Roosters and they, give their blood, sweat and tears, the Roosters tend to give back to them. Yeah. So I think that's also a massive, point of call. These players are great, but they know, hey, our lives after footy are also going to be beneficial from playing at this team.
Yeah, it shows how difficult the job is for clubs like the Tigers to drag themselves out of the cellar, right? Because you've got a squad there that's worth $2 million less than the Roosters.
Yeah,
and something to claw your way up the table. And it's up to Benji to make. For me, Benji's got to make those blokes more valuable, make those players better, and it closes the gap.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of been a slight on the clubs that have finished towards the bottom of the table. The clubs are paying overs for them because they're desperate to get the marquees. But are those guys going to those low clubs sort of getting any better as players? I'm not going to say. But you know what I mean when I'm saying like they pay overs for them thinking they're marquee players, but then go to the clubs and people say, hold on, this squad's actually gone backwards. Yeah. So it is like being in quicksand a little bit. It's hard for these coaches to get out of the predicaments that they're in.
They'll be worth, when Jerome Luai gets there next year, they'll be worth more than they are now, right? Which should help them bridge the gap to some of those top sides. And I think one of the reasons they bought Jerome Luai was the theory was that you bring in Jerome and that'll help you get other players. And that's something
for them.
Players want to play beside Nathan Cleary.
Yeah, 100%.
You know,
Yeah, well, they might have to
players
shed.
want to play beside Teddy and guys like that. Players want to play beside Cam Munster and Jerome because and Ryan Papenhuyzen and Harry because they're great players and people want to play with them. So the Tigers don't have those sort of players in their system at the moment. The Dogs don't really have those. You know, you could talk about it. Maybe Steve Crichton's a bit like that, but you know, Billy Army and Matt Burton, whilst really good players, I don't think players would be jumping under the skin to necessarily go to a club to play with them like they would for a Cleary and a Teddy and those sort of guys.
Just on, there was news yesterday, I think, Isaac Tungo,
Big bucks.
Big bucks. What did we make of that?
What was it? What did it average at? 800, 750 a
So
year?
I think it averages around 750 a year with the potential of it being more in that final year in 2028 because it's the new broadcast deal.
Yeah.
So thoughts?
Good deal.
It's hard to argue. I mean,
I think he's a future superstar.
Yeah, although he's young, he's proven every time he steps on the field, he does the job for Penrith. And I mean, what would you give him? What money would you give him? I guess.
I think you're paying him a little bit on potential, though. You know, that's truly elite centre. There's not many centres in the game who are paid more than that. Bradman Best just did a deal and got, I think, 700 maybe. Bradman Best.
Bradman Best.
Joe Manu.
Joe Manu would be on more than that, obviously.
Crichton. How much is Crichton on? About that, more than that?
Probably more than that as well.
Yeah.
But there's not many who would be on more than that. So he's a really good player, obviously. I think they're paying a little bit. They paid a bit of a premium based on what they think he might become.
But at a team like the Panthers, you know, I think that they kind of know. They have a map plan. This is you saw it with Nathan Cleary. When Nathan Cleary was there as a young guy, he got signed on potential. You know, he could be the next big thing. Look how he's developed.
I'll tell you the implications of it though for them. They're trying to re-sign Taylor May at the moment. What does that tell you about Taylor May's price tag now?
Yeah.
Like his manager's looking at that going, hold on, just giving Isaac Tungo, what, 750?
Yeah.
What's Taylor worth now?
That's a tough one. Yeah, like you said, that does obviously open up an issue, and especially for Panthers, a team that we've mentioned is struggling to keep their best players. So.
Have they re-signed Taruva yet? Is that another one?
Taruva
so that's
so
very
all those guys are watching that going, well, hello.
Yep.
Give me some. Give me a slice.
Yeah, absolutely, they
well,
would
their
be.
agents are anyway. Okay, let's touch on let's touch a little bit of controversy.
A little bit.
So for those of us who are in Vegas working really, really hard over there, obviously the big fallout out of that was the Ezra Mam, Spencer Leniu racial slur that's become, it's just been like a tsunami over the past week or so.
10 days.
Anthony Mundine and Latrell going at it.
Yep.
What do you? It's obviously the hearing's on tonight. What are we expecting? What do you think?
Well, obviously, you know,
Spencer's put his hand up.
Spencer's put his hand up, pleaded guilty, made a public apology, tried to apologise to Ezra Mam, who at this point has sort of not been open to that. Some speculation or suggestions that maybe Spencer Leniu was provoked during that game, which led to him saying what he did. I don't think that's an excuse. I think, you know, some people have been sort of trying to water down a little bit what happened, you know, saying things like, oh, that word isn't always used in a racial way, or, you know, Spencer even himself saying that I didn't mean it that way. I mean, there's so many, if you want to sledge someone, there are so many words you can use to pick that word. I don't buy that argument, but I have no doubt that's probably going to make part of Spencer's argument that there was an element of ignorance in that moment. But yeah, look, he's pleaded guilty. Today's judiciary is about how much time he gets, and that's been also a really contentious discussion as well. You know, I've heard between 6 to 8 weeks. It's a pretty, it's a shocking slur, right? There are games in European soccer that, you know, get called off because of ramifications of this slur being used. And I'm avoiding using the word because I think it's a pretty shitty word, to be honest. So yeah, I don't know, I do tend to agree with the players, and I know that technically they're not supposed to be saying anything, but, you know, to come out and draw a line in the sand and, you know, send a message, I don't think 6 weeks is anywhere near enough, to be honest. You know, unless Spencer can come up with some, you know, extraordinary evidence at the judiciary tonight sort of mitigating that, because you do have to take provocation into account, but it sounds like he's not going to sort of say what was said towards him. So yeah, I'm honestly, I really am intrigued into how, what sort of a punishment the NRL will come up with. I just don't think, this sort of racism, I guess, doesn't happen in rugby league very often. Like we've seen, the Latrell in the past sort of been a target of it from like fans and the rest of it. But in terms of in the moment, like in the game, it just doesn't happen. So, I think it's going to be a very interesting judiciary.
Tyson, there's been a lot of talk about players coming out and commenting on what sanction Spencer might get. Latrell's been the most outspoken, suggesting maybe he should get half a season for it.
Yeah.
And the NRL's had to come out and, they've privately told those players, look, you can come out and voice your support for Ezra Mann. Don't talk about whether he's guilty or innocent. Don't talk about whether he's guilty now. He's pleaded guilty. But don't talk about what he should get as a suspension. What do you think? Do you think the NRL's... What's your impression of all the commentary from players around this? Because they're not supposed to talk about matters before the judiciary.
Yeah, definitely. I think if I'm Latrell Mitchell, I'm a proud Indigenous man, and someone has kind of disrespected my culture, the first thing I want to do is stand up for a player who I appreciate, a player who shares the same beliefs and cultural traditions as me. So yeah, look, I think I'm all for the support. It's great to see, especially Ezra would have been in a terrible headspace after that happened, and we heard I think JT was the one that said he was in all sorts in the sheds. He had tears in his eyes. So I'm all for Latrell coming out and saying, yeah, this isn't right and things like that. But at the end of the day, we as journalists, there's fans, there's players. It's not really our place to determine a sentence for him or a punishment for Spencer. I think that's where we have to kind of sit back, and we might not agree with it after, but putting our own 2 cents in, saying he deserves half a season when no one knows the full story except for Spencer, Ezra, and the other players around them on the field. Hopefully we find out more tonight, and then people can have a bit more of a justifiable argument to what Spencer should get or shouldn't get. But I think at the moment we just kind of got to sit and wait. If we're jumping the gun and we're trying to put our own 2 cents worth in, it's going to cloud everyone else's judgment, and it almost...
But who's everyone else? This is that I've heard this a little bit. Latrell shouldn't say anything, or Nico Hines should have kept his mouth shut. But who are those players supposed to be influencing the judiciary?
I think the suggestion is that,
come on,
obviously on the judiciary panel is Jeff Bailey, the chairman.
As if he's going to be influenced by social media.
But it's
also his job to make sure the former players aren't influenced by that. And so if we have if we've got a judiciary panel that's going to be influenced by what players are saying on social media, we should just give up now. Like, seriously, come on.
Well, maybe subconsciously there's an impact. I don't know. I just know what his agent, what the roots are saying.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Well, but the other issue out of this is we've suddenly got Anthony Mundine and Latrell Mitchell going out, 2 really proud Indigenous guys who've done amazing things to the Indigenous community.
But that also shows how complicated, that's another thing too, it just also shows how nuanced this thing is, right? So, because you do have 2 proud Indigenous men in Chock and Trell, all of a sudden now having a sort of social media slanging match on it. But that just shows that there's lots of opinions out there about this, and I don't know, Latrell, I think Chock saying that Latrell sort of doesn't have a right to speak on these things was probably a bit rich.
Yeah. Are you telling me when we see, like you said, 2 influential people like Latrell and Anthony Mundine have 2 varying opinions, and I've spoken to both Latrell and Anthony Mundine before, both great guys, and they're both very passionate. You're telling me they don't have the ability to sway people in one way or another? And I know you said that doesn't really matter, but it does play a part.
I don't buy that them having a social media spat can sway, Justice Jeffrey Bellew at all. Come on.
I think that's probably quite sad that those blokes said.
Yeah, it is, absolutely.
Because as I said, they're 2 great Indigenous leaders, and the fact that you're right, what it shows is how complex this situation is. I love that word, nuanced.
Yeah.
I love
also,
how nuanced this situation
is. Just on that, so the players aren't allowed to say anything like before the judiciary, but I think there's also restrictions on them about what they can say even after the result is handed down tonight. So it's going to be interesting.
Well, they'll be saying plenty.
But that's what I mean. So it's going to be interesting because
you
you said the NRL has sort of been reluctant to say anything publicly against the players that have spoken out. So, and I think they're going to wait until the punishment is handed down tonight before they sort of say something officially on the record about all of that. I will be shocked if the NRL comes out and somehow punishes Latrell or Nico
What they'll do
Hines.
is they'll probably send a reminder that, hey guys, please refrain from talking. They had no problem with the guys coming out and supporting Ezra.
Yeah.
No issue with that. I think there was a commentary around that.
But I also
said,
think
length of band and that sort of stuff. And
but
I think they'll just be a reminder, hey guys, you just
even as in a reminder, as in regardless of what the result is tonight,
you know
sort
what?
of.
Fatima, this always happens, right? They'll come out and send a reminder, and the next time somebody's in trouble, everyone will be talking about it.
But that's what I mean, and this is the other thing too. Like, this is not that we've had players in the past, you know, sort of have opinions when there's been kind of shocking moments on the field, like, you know, head high, contact, shoulder charge, the rest of it. Like, all of a sudden now, just because it's a racial issue, we should be making sure that Latrell Mitchell and Nico Hines is quiet. Like, that stinks as well, you know. Like, if anybody's earned the right to have an opinion on this issue, it's those guys. So, and I think, and I know why the rules are there, I get it, but I tend to agree with what Keon Kalamatangi told me yesterday, that Latrell's an authority on this, and if he thinks Spencer Leniu should be banned for half the season, then, you know, I don't think, you know, that he should be silenced in having that opinion.
No one should be silenced in any kind of matter, especially when it comes to things like this. It is important that people's voices are heard, and that's if we all sat there and just bit our tongue and not said anything when this stuff comes out, it's just going to keep on happening, and it's going to normalise it.
All right, what do you have thoughts on? Did you say 6 to 8 weeks?
I'd heard initially 6 to 8 weeks. I think it'll probably number 6.
Heard
if I was a betting man.
Yeah.
Because he's pleaded guilty, so I'll probably get a discount for that. So
okay.
6. I don't know. Is it enough?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, a couple of big injuries quickly.
Yes. Well, we thought they were going to be. We thought they were going to be.
He looked all sorts, poor old Josh. He looked gone.
Looked like he was gone for half the season.
He did, yeah.
Fox, but those I've never had an AC joint injury. Maybe Tyson has.
I have one right now.
Oh, do you? Yeah. So we got told they're really painful.
It's quite painful. It's one of those things where clubs will try to get you back within 7 to 10 days usually, because it's not the worst injury in the world. However, it's just super painful. It's all about managing pain. So similar to how Josh did, I did my last trial a week ago for footy and got clipped, and I'm in all sorts at the moment, so I can only imagine how he is. But it's a niggly one rather than you see injuries, broken arms, ACLs where it's a clear cut.
It is. I think also it's a pain management one. Payne Haas played pretty much an entire season with 2 AC joint injuries, I think. So look, the Dogs themselves have said between 2 to 4 weeks. I had spoken to Adokar's camp, who 50-50, maybe he could come back this week, depending on he sort of pulls up during the week. As Tyson said, it's about sort of managing that pain. But if he is out, guys, Bronson Cherry time, kind of Tracy time.
How did he play on the weekend? Did you watch his game?
Yes. The New South Wales Cup game, that was a really good game, by the way. Heaps of points scored, which is just crazy. But Bronson played out of his skin. I thought that he looked very damaging with the ball. As we saw, it doesn't seem like he's lost much since he left. But he told us last week in a story I wrote that he's not here to play New South Wales Cup. He wants that first grade spot. So I dare say as soon as the ruling on Adokar comes out, he will be sitting down with Ciraldo pleading his case for a spot next week. And
what about Mitchy Moses? Was it a groin problem? He got through the game. Looks like he'll play this week against Penrith. Yeah,
very low grade groin problem. So he finished the match, even kicked towards. Kicked in that game towards the end of it. So he's cleared, which is Cleary v Moses showdown.
We'll look forward to that. Well, that's about it. Thanks, Tyson. You've battled on manfully with the AC joint.
It's getting better. It's getting better, so it should be all right.
Thanks, Fatima. Thank you for joining us on the Daily Telegraph NRL podcast. We'll see you next week.